This next one, I asked Myron if he thought it was appropriate that I read it, because I think the boundaries between poetry, poetic prose, short fiction can be really blurred. And I don't know what this piece is, but a little bit of background. This is just the most wonderful venue for it. As part of my Elwood Writers, I've been with Elwood Writers now for nearly 10 years. There are only 4 of us. And I probably wouldn't be here today with this sort of work if it hadn't been for their encouragement and support, and they would say the same about the others in the group. And occasionally we're invited to do a 1-hour programme on the cover-to-cover literary programme for Vision Australia Radio. And in November it was Armistice Day. Now my grandpa, I'm English, and my grandpa was 17 when he went to the trenches in France. And about 2 or 3 years ago I discovered that he'd written a little diary in the trenches. It's this big, and it's written in pencil, and it's really hard to read. And I wanted to write reflections on my grandpa, but I didn't want to write it in a linear way, you know. I wanted to write it in a different way that talked about him as a man and so on. And I broke it down into 3 parts, and in fact there was a poem in there too. And I didn't know how to write about the diary. And I had some inspiration through some workshopping that I could use the diary as an object and weave something around the diary. And so this is the second part of my reflections, and I've just called it the diary, and it's my grandpa. And here we are in the RSL. So I asked Myron if I could read it. The young soldier carried a small pocket diary with him on his journey right through the trenches, starting in Boulogne, France. He wouldn't write every day, just when he felt he had something to say, something he could hide in this little book to alleviate the loneliness of the endless marches in thickening mud and ferocious rain. He kept it wrapped in a piece of canvas close to his heart, a friend he had to protect from the waste and decay of war, the only one with whom he could share his secret thoughts. Days trudged into months, and as his boots rotted and his uniform stiffened with sweat and filth, his companion remained dry and warm next to his withering skin, receiving into its pages his words of despair. The soldier poured into it all he could not speak aloud, the horrors of men's legs blown off in front of him, the constant hunger that drove him to salvage any stale scraps of mouldy food he could grab from bodies not yet cold on the ground, and the unutterable boredom of endless grey days. Finally, so sick with dysentery, yet unscathed by bayonet or gun, and evacuated home to England, he packed up that tiny book and put it at the bottom of his kit bag, never to be opened again. He could not destroy this vessel that held his tortured past. To burn it or rip the pages from its leather cover would be to tear out his very soul. And so it remained unopened for 100 years, still alive with his outpoured words long after he was gone. And then one day, drawn to the size of those ancient whisperings, his granddaughter opened the covers and outflowed the remnants of a hidden life.